Welcome back. I'm Angela Brady. Today we're going to be looking at real property valuations. What I need you to do is look in your textbook at Chapter 17 and your workbooks in Unit 9. Today's objectives are the function of appraisals. The function of appraisals. We're going to look at the elements and principles of value, and we're also going to do a group CMA BPO, one and the same. Now today what I want to share with you is that an appraisal is an estimate or opinion of value, and it is supported by an analysis of relevant property data. Relevant property data. It is regulated at both the state and the federal level. Both the state and the federal level. An appraisal is far more accurate than what a broker will do when they do a CMA or a BPO. And it is only to be conducted by a licensed appraiser. A licensed appraiser. Appraisals are only good on the day in which they are appraised. Now, I want to ask you a question. Why do you think it would only be good on the day that it's appraised? Anybody have any questions or any ideas of why that might be?
Because the market price can change daily.
That's right, Ruth, because the marketplace can change daily. What are some things that might change the market? Okay, Irma just said the economy. Very good answer. The economy may change.
Another sale in the area.
Excellent. That's right, Dawn. Sales within the neighborhood, within the surrounding areas, will affect the price. Now, if you were doing a CMA when you first list a property and say you don't sell that property for 6 months, say it's been on the market for 6 months, do you think you might need to do another CMA before closing?
Yeah.
Absolutely, because the market is always changing. And we're going to look at that in a little bit, but the market's always changing. Now, in regards to an appraiser's compensation, it is fee-based. It's not commission-based as a realtor would be based. It is based upon the time and effort. The time and effort that an appraiser puts into his appraisal. And it cannot be a percentage of the appraised value or tied to the result in any form or fashion. Why do you think it might be the reason that it cannot be tied to the result? Absolutely. I heard the answer a lot of places. If somebody is doing an appraisal and it were tied to the result or tied to the price of the property, would they want to do lower priced properties? No, they would always want to do the higher priced properties. Would that be fair? No. So it always is going to be based on the time and the effort, never based on the cost of the house or the sales price of the house or what it costs. So it's always going to be based on time and effort. When it comes to an appraisal, it determines the market value of a property. And we're going to talk a lot about market value today, a whole lot about market value. And it is also used by lenders when they are determining if the value is supported by a specific lien. By a specific lien. How do y'all like my graphics? I threw one in there that I think you'll really like. It really doesn't have a lot to do with real estate, but I just loved it and had to throw it in. I'll show you in a minute. It is required by all federally related loan programs. All federally related loan programs. And it assures the relationship between the loan amount and also the property value to make sure it's appropriate. You're going to see the term LTV, that is loan to value, repeatedly in this course, loan to value. And what this is it's the loan price versus how much it cost, and that's going to be the loan to value percentage. For example, let's look at this slide right here. If a house, if the loan is $320,000, that's all that the lender will pay is $320,000. But the sales price is $400,000. That's what it appraised for, and that's what the people are willing to purchase it for. There is an 80% loan to value. Does that make sense? So what is the percentage that they're going to have to bring to the settlement table? 20%. 20%. Very good. 80,000, 20%. That's correct, Paul. Appraisals are also used for insurance. How many of you have homeowners insurance? Oftentimes they will use an appraisal to be able to determine if the amount that you are having insured is correct. But another thing that oftentimes that homeowners associations are doing, or home insurance companies like homeowners insurance, another thing that they're doing is they're getting the BPOs or CMAs from realtors, full brokers, to be able to determine the appraised value, simply because it's a lot less expensive. And it's used for condemnation. Now, what would be a condemnation type situation? That's right, Ruth, a foreclosure. A foreclosure. Now, 3 different approaches are used whenever they are determining appraisals. 3 different approaches. The first approach we're going to look at is the sales comparison approach, and it is used mostly for residential property and vacant land. Residential property and vacant land. That is the sales comparison approach. Make sure you write this down. This is extremely important. Sales comparison approach. Residential and vacant land. We're going to go more into detail in just a few moments about the sales comparison approach. Another approach that we are going to just take a real quick peek at is the cost approach. Now, what do you think that this is used for most of the time? The cost approach.
Specialty buildings.
Absolutely. Specialty buildings like churches, schools, unusual buildings, that's correct. Thank you, Christian. And also new construction. New construction also uses the cost approach. And then another approach we're going to look at is income capitalization approach. And this approach is most of the time used whenever you are trying to purchase a property that generates some type of income. This is used with rentals. This is used with shopping centers, different types of situations where you are going to generate some income. So the income capitalization approach. So I want you to make sure you write down income capitalization approach, the cost approach, and also sales comparison approach. These 3 approaches I would love for you to just write down, because you're going to see these frequently, and I'm going to zip back through. A moment ago I told you that we're going to be talking a lot about value. Value is what you want. Market value, what you want. It is the estimate based on data. The most probable price. I want you to repeat that with me. The most probable price. Market price is going to be what the property actually sold for. So market value is probable price. Market price is what the property actually sold for. Sometimes people get confused on these 2. One of the things that I want to share with you is in regards to market value. How many of you value rock and roll? Y'all raise your hand. I need to know. And I'm talking classic rock. I'm not talking about the junk we hear today. I'm talking the real music. Right. Do you remember the old song, "You Can't Always Get What You Want"? This is how I remember value. I find value in that song and old classic rock and roll. And that's how I remember the difference between market value and market price. So maybe that'll help you as well. Market value, you can't always get what you want. Market price is what you got. And we're going to look at a couple of these. And is market value and market price always the same? Absolutely not. It could go either direction. Now, when it comes to market value, it's the most probable price that a property will bring when a willing seller will sell and a willing buyer will buy. A willing seller will sell and a willing buyer will buy. I'm going to give you a couple of moments to write it down. I see I'm going a little bit fast, so I'm going to slow down. A willing seller will sell and a willing buyer will buy. Another thing about market value I want to share with you today is there can be no undue pressure. No undue pressure. That will affect market value. So when you're looking at market value, no undue pressure. And it has to be on the market for a reasonable length of time. It has to be on an open market for a reasonable length of time. When it comes to market value, both the buyer and the seller have got to be well informed about the uses of that property, both the positive and the negative. Both the positive and the negative. Both buyer and seller must be well informed. In regards to market value, what is it again? It's on the board. That's right, it is the most probable price. That is value, the most probable price. And it may not be the same as the listing price. It may not be the same as the listing price. It is not what the property costs to purchase the property. It is not what the property costs to purchase it. And another thing about market value versus market cost is that oftentimes the market cost may be more than the market value, or it may be less. I'm going to give you two illustrations. There is a home that a friend of mine purchased back in 1987. They had lived in the house for about 10 years, and they decided that the wife's mother was going to come and reside with them. She had gotten elderly and they were going to take care of her. So they moved her down. They purchased a master suite for themselves and gave her their original master bedroom. They invested $90,000 in this master suite. It was amazing. You could live in that master suite. I mean, it was that incredible. Then our friend, he gets called by the wonderful Navy, or I don't remember. He was in the Air Force. I'm sorry, he was a pilot. He was in the Air Force. He gets called, and he is going to be stationed in Alabama. So they decide they need to move this property quickly. They need to sell the property as quickly as possible and move to Alabama because they couldn't afford to purchase a house without selling their own. When they had an appraisal done on the property, that brand new master suite had destroyed the value of that home because it was much larger than the other houses in the neighborhood, and we're going to look at this again in just a moment. And that $90,000 addition only added $10,000 worth of value to that house. So that's why sometimes cost is not equivalent to the value. There's another situation where my church that I attend, they decided that we had been meeting in a school for 9 years, and we finally had the opportunity to purchase a building. And we purchased a building, and I'll tell you about it later because we purchased the actual frame of the building on Craigslist for $40,000. It was an old military barracks, and we completely gutted it and used it as a building. It's gorgeous now. We put in $100,000 worth of sweat equity into that property. People would come from all over North Carolina and work on that property, and we worked on it. You do not want to see me working on that property. People probably had to come in and redo what I did. But we added $100 worth of value to that property. So when we went to have an appraisal done on that property, it was far more highly appraised than what we had purchased it for, what the cost of it was. See how the difference is? It could go either way. It could be up or it could be down. So another thing about market price, remember market value is what you want, most probable price. Market price is actually the sales price, and it is a historical fact. So market price is a historical fact. You could go to the tax records and see what somebody purchased the house for. It is a historical fact. Hate to say it, but sometimes it's a hysterical fact. For example, this property was listed at $185,000. It was listed for $185,000. It appraised for $180,000, and they sold it for $179,000. Tell me, which one would have been the value? Very good. 185 would have been the value. 180 was the appraised price. But the salesperson and the owner, they felt like 185, the list price. Remember, the actual value would have been 180, the appraised price. It's what they wanted, but they listed it for 185. Remember, sometimes value and price is a little bit different, just slightly. But what was the market price? What was the historic fact? 179. That is correct. Now we're going to look at the essential elements of value. We've looked at the market value, market price. We've looked a little bit at cost. Now we're going to look at the essential elements of value. How many of you in here like to dust? I don't know of anybody that loves to dust, not one soul. But is it important? Absolutely, it's important. And in regards to the essential elements of value, you can remember what they are by the word dust. D-U-S-T, dust. The essential elements of value, the D stands for the demand. The demand. D stands for demand. The desire. And the affordability. A house that is in high demand is one that is going to be an element of that value. Demand. The U stands for utility, utility, or usefulness, utility, or usefulness. Does that property fulfill a specific need? Now, I want to ask you a question, ladies and gentlemen. Who is usually the one that is most interested in a property when they go to view it? The husband and wife goes in to look at a property. Who is usually the one that is the most determining factor of who purchases that property? The wife. So that's why I have a crown up there. She's either the princess or the queen. The wife. Is the house useful for her? Does she love the kitchen? Does she love the master bath? So usefulness or utility. D stands for demand. U stands for utility. The S stands for scarcity. Scarcity. A finite supply of land. A limited land in a specific area. Limited land in a specific area. We went to Hawaii one time actually it was a mission trip. We didn't get to go on a vacation. That's my goal one day, to go on a vacation. But we literally went on a mission trip. And while we were there, my husband and I were riding around in a bus looking at the areas of Hawaii that were more in decline. And while we were there, we saw a piece of property on a mountainside. It was a very small piece of property. And Todd said, "Angela, call up and see how much that is." And I said, "Todd Brady, I am not going to call and ask how much that is." He goes, "You're a realtor, aren't you?" And so I said, "Well, okay." He said, "Who knows? We might decide one day we're going to retire and come here." Oh, yeah. We found out the price of living in Hawaii, that is not even an option. When I called the real estate company, I found out that that tiny little piece of property on the mountain was $3.5 million. $3.5 million because the property in that area on that island was so scarce. So that is a big deal when it comes to the S for scarcity. S. Another thing that we're going to look at is the T. T stands for transferability. Transferability. You must have a marketable title. If you don't have a good title, there is no value. So, transferability. Transferability. Okay, what does the D stand for? Raise your hand. D stands for? Demand. Demand. Very good. That is right. Bennett? Very good, Bennett. What does the U stand for? Utility, that's right. Utility. How about the S? Scarcity. And what does the T stand for? Transferability. If you have a clouded title, do you have an issue? Oh, yes, you do. So D-U-S-T. So we've looked at this. Now let's take a look at something else. I want us to look at the forces and factors affecting value. Do you think certain things affect value? Absolutely. There are a lot of things that do affect value. Physical and environmental forces. Physical and environmental forces. We're talking about natural resources, climate, topography, flood conditions, etc. How many of you know of people that live up north that want to live down south? Because of the climate. So physical and environmental forces. These are forces and factors that affect value. The next one we're going to look at is economic forces. Economic forces. Employment trends. Wage levels. Interest rates. When the interest rates went down, did suddenly the housing industry go up? Absolutely. So interest rates have a lot to do in regards to forces, economic forces. When you've got a community that there's a new plant opening up, do you think a lot of people might move to that area? Absolutely. But what if you've got businesses shutting down? What happens to that area? It becomes depressed. People move away. Oftentimes it even becomes like a ghost town. So economic forces are extremely important. Third, we're going to look at government forces. Government forces, activities, zoning laws, and building codes. Rent control. Do you think rent control can have some type of factor in value? Absolutely, especially in places like New York City. How about Raleigh? Are there some rent control situations here in Raleigh? There are? Okay. I live in Fayetteville, so I'm not real familiar with a lot of rent situations in Fayetteville. We have a base, and we have a lot of people that live close to the base, but that doesn't have anything to do with rent control. So does anybody know of any apartment complexes here in Raleigh that do have rent control? No?
Explain rent control.
Did you ever watch Friends? Do you remember Friends? They had a set price for that rent, and therefore people were able to live in that apartment because that price of that rent was set, and it didn't change. And so the rent was controlled.
Okay.
So that's it. So yes. I always want to know about different areas whenever I go to different areas to find out. How about social forces? Social forces, societal views, family sizes, trends, societal forces. That was a good question, Myra. Thank you.
Which one of those would schools go under?
Hold on one second. My mouse went a little crazy there for a second. What was the question?
Like schools, would schools be a factor of the value?
Absolutely. Schools would be a factor. Let's look in here. Principles of, let's go.
Right now. Yep.
Physical,
So
environmental,
any
forces, employment, interest rates. I would say government forces. Because are our schools controlled by the government? And are they zoned? Do we have zoning in regards to it? There's a lot of, I know that in Fayetteville, a lot of people move to certain areas because of the school systems. And I know that happens here as well.
So that'd be economic forces, basically?
I would say government forces more for the school because of the zoning situation.
I think it kind of depends on what they're going for. You're talking the school, the government, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
But I think some people look at it, the social aspect of it.
This is true.
It could be.
It could be,
Many of them.
you're absolutely right.
Be one too.
You're absolutely right, John, because there are some people that are going to want to live in a more affluent neighborhood.
Social.
That's right. And there's some that are going to want to go to a more influential or what they consider to be the best school district, but do we ever tell anybody it's the best school district? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. What do we tell them? Do research. Do research. Look it up. Check the test scores. We do not steer them in any form or fashion in regards to school districts. We are very cautious about that. So you are absolutely right, John. Certain things can be in different factors. Very good observation. We've looked at the forces and factors that are affecting value. Now I want to look at the principles of value. And I want to before we get into this one, I want to give you a little trick. A little trick. There are 8 of them. The first one's going to be highest and best, and the last 4 all start with C. So if you can remember the first one being highest and best, just in this number, you can do it in any order, but we're doing it in this order. The first one, number 1, will be highest and best. The last 4 begin with C, and then you're only going to have to really worry about 3. Would that be a good little tip to help you remember? Okay, so principles of value. In regards to the principles of value, highest and best use. Highest and best use. Now this is going to be the principle that provides the greatest net return. The greatest net return. And it is typically the current use. Typically the current use. It might be different from the existing use, and it may change over time, but it's only going to change one at a time. I want to show you a word picture to give you an idea of highest and best. How many of you have ever been to Myrtle Beach? Do you remember when you were younger and there was a strip mall that had the Waccamaw Pottery in it? There's a strip mall over in the area called Fantasy Harbor, near where Medieval Times is located. Now you know what I'm talking about? Where Medieval Times is located. Over in that area was a strip, well, it was a nice shopping center actually. It was more than just a strip mall. It was a wonderful shopping center. It had the Waccamaw Pottery and it was booming with business. You could go there any time of year and it would be crowded. They also had a theater on the other side. They had lots of stores, and it was the happening place to go in Myrtle Beach. Well, a lot of property was sold in Myrtle Beach, and it ended up being sold. And when it was purchased by some out-of-town investors that decided they wanted to create the Hard Rock Park. The Hard Rock Park was supposed to be an amazing place for people to go. It was supposed to be next to Disney World. It was supposed to be incredible. Well, the prices were Disney World prices. I'm going to tell you the truth. We went there once. But it wasn't complete. They had not finished the building of the Hard Rock Park, but the tickets were astronomical. When they went to put in Hard Rock Park, I talked to some of the businessmen in Myrtle Beach. My husband and I had dinner with them and sat down and just chatted with them one night. Actually, we ran into them by accident, but it was very informative. We found out that when the investors came to South Carolina and they spoke to the board in regards to purchasing the property, they made promises that they would hire locals to run the park. And it was going to help the economy. It was going to be an incredible business move for Myrtle Beach. It was a lie. They brought in people from other countries. They put them up in apartments, and I am talking multiple people living in one apartment all over the Myrtle Beach area, and they paid them less than minimum wage. These were college students coming over for study abroad and working in the summer. They paid them next to nothing, and Myrtle Beach began to suffer financially. So what happened is the Myrtle Beach residents stopped supporting the Hard Rock Park, and this is what happened. It went bankrupt. This is what's there now. What do you think was the highest and best use? I believe the shopping center, because the Hard Rock Park did not last hardly at all. So it can change. So this is the same property, the same exact property, same space. But do you see how it changed over time? How the highest and best use is not always the current use? Because right now it is completely vacant. It's a ghost town. And I'm hoping that one day somebody's going to go and refurbish it, and it's going to be a beautiful place again to bring the economy back to that area. So that is highest and best. Now, in regards to highest and best, an appraiser must show current highest and best use in an appraisal. So they've got to use the current highest and best use in an appraisal. And it is not used in regards to a CMA or BPO. So we do not use highest and best use when we're doing a CMA or a BPO. Highest and best use, like I showed a moment ago, can be either positive or negative. Wait a minute. I'm sorry. That's true. Highest and best use was number 1. I'm sorry. Number 2 is anticipation. But can highest and best use be negative or positive? Absolutely. The second principle of value is anticipation. Anticipation, and it can be both positive or negative. If we've got an incredible belt line coming through an area that's going to make everything faster to be able to get to, is that going to be something that is a positive influence? What about fracking? Do you think that's a positive influence for everyone? No. So we are anticipating fracking coming through Fayetteville. And all over my community, you see no fracking signs everywhere. That is anticipation in a negative fashion. What is something here in the Raleigh area that may have anticipation in a negative fashion? Is there anything that may be coming that causes concern for some citizens?
Light rail.
Pardon me?
Yeah. Well, you just said light rail.
Light rail, the light rail system. What was your name? I can't.
My name's Ben.
Thank you, Ben. The light rail system. So that is something that is anticipated here in this area, but it doesn't have a very positive influence. So the light rail system. The third thing is supply and demand. Supply and demand. This is the principle of value. Supply and demand. It's extremely important. The number of available properties. Now, price moves opposite of supply. So when the supply goes up, the price goes down. So what would happen if the supply goes down? That's right, the price goes up. The price goes up. That's right, Myrna. The price goes up. In regards to demand, the number of properties that will be purchased, the price moves with demand. So when the price goes up, the demand goes up. When the price goes down, the demand goes down. It moves with it. It is used to determine sales price and rental rates. You need to really take special attention to this. In regards to supply and demand, it is used to determine sales price and rental rates. Sales price and rental rates. For some reason, this is something that's oftentimes forgotten or missed. Sales price and rental rates. Substitution. Substitution. Equally desirable substitute. Substitution, that is the fourth principle of value. We have it listed as D. Substitution. And it meets the same criteria of time, function, and utility. This is also used when we do CMA, and it's used in the sales comparison approach. Substitution, that is the basis of the sales comparison approach. But it is also used in all three approaches. It is the lowest price with the highest value that will sell first. The lowest price with the highest value is always going to sell first. And in order for an appraiser to be accurate, he must consider what the market will pay. He must consider what the market will pay. The fifth one is conformity. Number E, conformity. Conformity, we're starting with the 4 C's. Conformity. Values tend to move towards surroundings. I want you to take a picture, a look at this picture right here. This is regression. This is the value of over-improved property is going to decline. Remember the story I told you about my friend that put in that $90,000 master suite, and it caused the property to be over-improved, and it caused the value to decline? Regression. Do you think this property fits there in that neighborhood? Absolutely not. That is regression. Also, another one would be progression, and that is the value of under-improved properties when they increase. Values are going to be the most stable when properties are all very similar. If you live in a neighborhood and you have never added any value to your property, but houses in your neighborhood very similar to yours have sold at higher prices, do you think that's going to influence the price of your particular home? Is that going to increase the value? It will. It will. Even though it's under improved because of the surrounding area selling at higher prices, it's going to have an effect on your property as well. Contribution. Contribution. That's another C. Contribution. Not what the improvement cost. Not what the improvement cost, but the market value it adds to the property. Contribution. I want you to look at this slide right here. You see a kitchen. What are the 2 things that tend to add the most value to a property? The kitchen and the bathroom. The kitchen and the bathroom. Those are the 2. Do you think a pool adds a lot of value? It depends on the area, but most often no. Thank you, Bennett. If you live in an area like Orlando and you don't have a pool and it's so hot you can't even go outside, it may be that pool's going to add value. But if you live in our area here in North Carolina, very frequently, the addition of a pool is not going to help your value. We decided about a month ago that we thought we might go and put in a pool in our backyard. We live on about 1.5 acres of land, and we live out in the country. And it's so hot where we live that there's not a lot you want to do in the heat in the dead of summer. It's like that here too, because we only live, an hour away. So we thought, let's go and see how much it would be to put in an in-ground pool. So we went to several different dealers and talked to them. We researched it online, and Ruth, it would have cost $25,000 to put in a pool in my backyard. I would have to live to 100 to be able to get the benefits of that. And I'm not planning on that. Well, we decided that we may be moving after my daughter graduates from college in 2 years. Would I get the value out of that pool if we were to move in 2 years? No, so it would not be a wise investment. So we decided that contribution to my property was not worth the price. So therefore, we did not put a pool in. When it comes to contribution, increasing returns occur when improvements add more value than what they cost. Just like the church building that we purchased, and we put all that contribution to it through sweat equity. Does everyone know what sweat equity means? Hard work. Doing the work yourself, that's what sweat equity is. And decreasing returns occur when improvements add less value than what they cost, such as a swimming pool in the South. Except maybe Orlando or someplace like that where they are prominent. Another C we're going to look at is competition. Competition. A reasonable amount of competition is going to drive up value. due to the increase in demand. People often want what they cannot have. So there's a lot of competition. This area is a seller's market. It is a seller's market. And I know this for a fact. I sold a house in this area to my best friend that lives here. And you would put in a bid on a house. You put in an offer on a house here, and before the seller would even get it in his hand, several other offers had been put in. We lost, I don't know how many offers. The competition here is steep. Whereas in a city like Fayetteville or Dunn, it is a buyer's market. It is completely opposite. Completely opposite. How often do you pay the closing cost here in the Raleigh area? Do you know? You're not familiar? Well, y'all probably wouldn't know. You're pre-licensing, duh. But in regards to the Raleigh area, from what I've been told by some other agents that work here, most often the buyers pay the closing here in Raleigh. In other areas of North Carolina where it's a buyer's market, the seller pays the closing cost. I could not tell you how many closings take place in areas such as Dunn, Fayetteville, Godwin, places like that, Benson, where the seller pays all the closing cost. And the buyer walks away from the closing table with their earnest money back. This happens every day in our area. It's a completely different world. So competition is what affects this. Also, buyer's market, seller's market, it's different. Change. Change. That's the last C, change. Do we live in a world that is ever changing? Things are ever changing. Technology, you can't keep up with it. By the time you purchase an iPhone, it's already out of date. And that's how it is in the market. Everything changes. All physical and economic conditions change. Neighborhoods go through a life cycle. I want you to look at this chart right here. They have 4 stages. They have growth. Can everybody see this on the slide? They have growth, they have stability, they have decline, and they have stabilization. Growth, stability, decline, and revitalization. I want to give you an illustration. There is a downtown area. I don't know if this area has had the same situation. I'm sure it probably has. But let's use Wilmington, for example. Wilmington, North Carolina, used to have a very booming downtown. It's a port city. But I grew up there. But when I was a little girl, the downtown went through a decline. It was very, very strong, and then it went through a decline. And now it's a booming city again. It's a beautiful downtown port city. Neighborhoods go through a decline, and there are 4 stages. Let's look at the stages again. Growth, stability, decline, and revitalization. So Wilmington had a growth, I'm sure. I wasn't born when it had the growth. But then it had a stability. That's where I experienced it as a little girl and as a teen. But then when in my older teens, I saw it start to decline. The stores that had been open were no longer open. They were closing down. People were going out of business. And then other owners finally came in and purchased these stores, and they began to be revitalized. The same thing happens in neighborhoods. An older neighborhood, when it started out, it was a baby. It was a brand new, beautiful neighborhood. Everybody wanted to live there. They were really excited to live there. Then it grows, it stabilizes. Then a lot of new people come in. They move into the neighborhood. They don't take care of the property. It starts to decline in value. And then maybe they have new people come in and purchase, and they really care about it. Maybe they reinforce the homeowners association, and they start taking care of the neighborhood. That will be a growth cycle for a neighborhood. Whoop. Now we've looked at the principles of value. You've looked at the essential elements of value. Let's now look at the appraisal process. And this is where we are going to really focus on the sales comparison approach or the market data approach. You are going to really want to take good notes in regards to this especially. The sales comparison approach, market data approach. This is the most appropriate method for vacant lot and land. For residential property and vacant land. Residential property and vacant land. And it is an estimate of value that is based on adjustable sales prices of recently sold similar properties. It is an estimate of value based on adjusted sales prices of recently sold properties that are very, very similar. And it's going to be in the area of which the subject property is. In regards to this approach, it's very similar to what a broker does when they're doing a CMA or a BPO, comparative market analysis, or a broker price opinion. That's what those initials stand for, and we're going to get into that in just a moment. You will have a subject property. You will pick a subject property. The appraiser has a subject property that he's going to do an appraisal on. And the property being the property being appraised are going to be the comps. You will never, ever adjust the subject. You will always adjust the comparables to be like the subject. Always. You will never, ever adjust the subject. The comparable sales we're going to refer to as comps. Comparable sales are comps. And they are going to be recently sold similar properties. Are they going to be in the same area? Absolutely, yes. And the most recent sales are going to be the best indicator of the current market value. See how similar these properties are? Would properties this similar be good to be able to determine the value? Absolutely, because they're extremely similar. You are going to use the most current comparables in a rapidly changing market. The most current comparables in a rapidly changing market. Preferably within 6 months. I try to use even closer to 3 months. I try to use the most current sold properties at all possible. Never would an appraiser go past a year though. And it may be that it's in an area that is very small and they don't have any properties that are similar, so he has to go past that 6-month period. But generally, he's going to go as close to that 6 months as he can. The closer that they can get to the sales price of a comp, the better it is. The sales date, the sales date. You are always going to adjust the sold comparables. You are never going to use expired, withdrawn, active listings. You will always use the sold comparables. This is extremely important, and you're going to make them like the subject. All comps should be an arm's length transaction. So you will not want to use a property that was sold in a family or a property that had been a foreclosure. You want to make sure that all properties are arm's length transaction. And only, like I said a moment ago, only sold comparables. This is extremely important. Only sold comparables. And the comps with the least adjustments are going to have the greatest indicators of the value of that property. So the least adjustment, the better. We're going to do something in just a moment called a paired analysis approach in just a second, and you're going to see exactly what I'm talking about. Market cycles of rapidly increasing and decreasing values often create a need for time of sale adjustment, just like we spoke earlier. If you've got a property that you listed 6 months ago and then you're getting ready to go to closing, you should have made that appraiser would have had to make adjustments. If a house is going on the market, just like that house I told you about with the addition, we had an appraiser come out and appraise that property because it was unlike any other property. But if that house had been on the market for 6 months, they would have had to go and reappraise it again to make sure that it was correct because of the ever-changing neighborhood that property was in. Yes, Daniel?
Can
I certainly can. Oh, that's the one I want to show you. Is this where? Only sold?
We're looking at the primary elements of comparison and adjustment to determine
The most current comparables. One more?
that. I think we're going back way too far now.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Look here and see if you see where we missed it.
Be number 4.
Oh, yeah, where it starts talking about lot size.
One more. Oh, there's the picture I showed. I wanted to tell you about the puppies. The puppies. I just had to throw it in there because they all look just alike, and they have the least amount of adjustment because they're all identical little puppies. Had nothing to do with real estate, but I just had to throw it in there for you. Here we go. Is this the one you were speaking of? Primary elements of comparison and adjustment: the lot size, the date of sale, values may be appreciating or depreciating. Daniel, did you get it?
Yes, thank you so much.
You are so welcome. Okay, the lot size, the date of sale, values may be appreciating or depreciating. The days on the market, the amenities, the square footage, and not the purchase price or acquisition cost of the subject property. These are all in regards to the sales comparison market data approach. Now we're going to see how we're going to put it into action. Did everybody get this written down? Okay, very good. We're going to see how you adjust comparables. You have a subject property that has no garage. You're going to adjust a comparable to be just like the subject property. We find a comparable in the same neighborhood that looks just like it, but it has a garage. It has a 2-car garage. You discover that the garage value in this area is worth $10,000. Now, if the comp is better or superior, you're going to subtract the value. Now, the comp does not have a garage. The subject does not have a garage, but the comp does. What will we do? That's right, you're going to subtract the comp. What will you subtract? $10,000, that's correct. So the adjusted value is going to be what? $340. Very good. It's going to be $340. So if you are adjusting any time it is superior, you will subtract. Remember the S. Superior, subtract. Now, if the comp, say that the comp is better, the subject is better than the comp, this is what you will do. If the comp is inferior to the subject, you increase. So if the comp is inferior to the subject, increase. 2 I's there. Inferior, increase. So you know that the value was $10,000, so you will increase it. And that one had sold for $340, so what is the value going to be now? $350. Very good. Anybody need to write that down? Are we good? Excellent. How the value is going to be determined, an appraiser uses what is called a paired sales analysis. A paired sales analysis. A paired sales analysis. If an appraiser locates 2 identical properties in the same area, and everything on those 2 properties are identical except for one item, he's got a good paired sales analysis he can do. Now, oftentimes on tests and in your textbook, you're going to see more than 2 shown. You're going to see 3, and we're going to do one with 3 in just a moment. But this one here, we're going to show you the principle of substitution in regards to this in just a moment. The principle of substitution, you take the value of the improvement, the difference in the sales price of the 2 properties, one with the improvement and one without. And the value is not based on the cost, but what the market will pay for it. It's what the market paid for it. Market price, what it sold for, not just the value. For example, you have 2 identical properties here. Comp 1 has 4 bedrooms and it sold for $254,500. Comp 2 has 3 bedrooms and it sold for $250,000. Let's look at the 2 comps right here. So what you will do is you will take the difference between Comp 1 and Comp 2. What will be the difference?
$4,500.
That's right, it will be $4,500. So in this situation, we know that 1 bedroom is worth $4,500. This is what the paired analysis is. Now we're going to do an activity.